Welcome. It's Friday. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's career happy hour. Welcome, everyone. I'm Andrew Beach. I'm an executive coach. I help professionals like you communicate their value to find great opportunities faster. That's whether you're working or not. I do that through a pragmatic process of professional branding, planning, and of course, effective networking. So that's the topics that we would be covering today if you're interested. And this is free coaching. I come here as a resource to you and make myself available every Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific time, to answer your questions. So what does that mean? Well, that means you should probably put some questions into the chat so that I can answer them. And let's just make sure I'm live on all of my networks here. It looks like I'm live on LinkedIn. Good. Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook in my group. So if you're interested, you can put some questions in the chat. Let me know where you're joining from, or just say, hey, happy Friday. Just let me know that you can hear me in the chat and that the audio is coming through loud and clear for y'all. That said, it would be helpful, regardless of the platform that you're joining from, to actually share this out with your networks and let them know that there is a free service every Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific time. It's called Career Happy Hour. Terry Smith, one of our veteran members of this group, used to call it cocktail hour. So I'll see you at cocktail hour. It's like, okay. I save that for after the broadcast because I do want to give you my best today and see how I can support you. So please, if you have questions about career, what's happening in the marketplace, leadership, how to interview, what should I do if my resume isn't getting me results? I've interviewed 50 times and didn't get an offer. What's wrong with me? So sometimes there's nothing wrong with you, to be honest. There's something wrong with the process of hiring. Isn't as smooth and frictionless as you think it might be. And the end isn't the end until you start work. So even if you've got an offer in hand, that doesn't mean you're going to start work. So also we have a habit here, regardless of the platform you're joining by, that if you share your LinkedIn profile in the chat, what you're signaling to everybody here in this community, and this is a community, is that you're open to being connected with. And I think that's valuable because it's hard enough today to network with people on LinkedIn, 722 plus million accounts. I mean, how do you get noticed? How do you get people's time? Everybody's so busy. Why would they want to talk to me? That sort of thing. That I'm trying to make this a place where people can come. They can say, yes, I'm open to networking. And if you put your LinkedIn profile in the chat, you will say yes if someone reaches out to you. So thank you, Miles. Good to see you. Happy Friday. Some LinkedIn user. So it's funny because sometimes when you have turned off certain privacy settings in LinkedIn, it won't show who made the comment. It'll just say LinkedIn user. So anyway, interesting. So happy Friday to LinkedIn user. Good to see you. Well, thank you, Miles. I do appreciate those kind words. I do my best to make an effort to add value in any way that I can. And this is just a way for me to give back to the community. The views and the things that I share every Friday are my own views and kind of my own perspectives on things. And, I don't expect to get anything back or out of this other than other people come and they see what's going on here and they want to be a part of it. So if that's you, then certainly go ahead and put your question in the chat. I want to know what's going on with you that you need help with. And then in the meantime, I will be looking at the LinkedIn news because every Friday I made a habit now of saying, okay, what can we garner really from not just from LinkedIn, but from any news that we're reading in the marketplace? And how can we use that to our benefit professionally speaking? Because in every piece of bad news, there might be an opportunity to provide support or solutions. In every piece of good news, there might be opportunity for additional headcount, right? So there's a lot of things to think about when you come to reading the news. You can't just read it. You have to interpret it for yourself in your situation. Hi, Ami. good to see you. Thank you for putting your LinkedIn profile in the chat. That's an indicator that she's open to network with anyone in this group. Good. So if you have questions, please put those in the chat. Happy to answer. Of course, there's also live coaching. So if you're joining and you're kind of lurking in the background, not commenting because you don't want people to see that you're viewing the session, I can't see that unless somebody actually does a comment or shares something or in some way interacts with the broadcast. I don't know that you're even on here. So in that case, if you have a question, but you don't want to make it public, there is a green room, and that link is in the description. So if you go up in LinkedIn in the top right, you'll see the caption for this session, and you'll see a link there that says see more. I think it says see more or show more. It's either see more or show more. Anyway, you'll see it up there, and you can come into the private chat and you can say, hey, I have an anonymous question. In fact, if it asks you for your name, just put in anonymous, anonymous. And then type in your question, and I'm happy to answer it without you having to go out and be public about it, which a lot of people can find, kind of nerve-wracking, especially if people don't know or haven't heard that you might be looking for opportunities. Amy. Okay. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that correction. So one of the things along those lines, Amy, that I think would be helpful. Let's see if you've done it. I'm just checking out something here real quick. Yeah. So what you could do, and you only have 92 connections, Amy, and I'm not making a judgment, but I would certainly make an effort to try to double your connections. And there's lots of people here that you can connect with on LinkedIn. Anyway, so if I were you, because you have a pronunciation of your name that might be different than the spelling, you can actually go on the mobile app, and in the mobile app, it'll allow you to actually record your name. And you'll then see on your profile a little, how would you call it? It looks like the volume icon, and it allows you to be seen that way. So just something to consider. But I was just peeking at your profile here, snooping your profile, if you will, and trying to see what I can garner. Maybe we'll do a LinkedIn profile review today. That seems like a low bar, but we could do that for Amy. Good. So let me take a look at the news, because I always like to stay current with what's going on myself. And this is kind of holding myself accountable to share some things based on what I'm seeing in the marketplace and the candidates that I'm interacting with on a daily basis, and just give you a state of the union each week on a perspective, right? Maybe a different perspective than you had before. And that's really helpful because what do they say? Change of pace plus change of pace equals change in perspective. And if we can just look at a new perspective, we might actually get some clarity on our next steps. So let me hide the captions. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and let's walk through the news, if that's all right with y'all. And I'll be hanging here. And if a question comes up based on what we're discussing, then certainly put that in the chat. So let's make this a little bit bigger so we can read it. Let's see. So much for an office return. Wow, that's rather dramatic. Hi, Tracy from Houston. Good to see you. As the nation's army of white-collar workers gears up to return to offices, some companies are pulling back on their reopening plans. Google and Apple are among firms contemplating mandatory vaccinations and mask mandates, or are pushing back return dates altogether amid a wave of infections driven by the Delta variant. To think this wasn't coming is foolish. I mean, there's things that happen when these kind of viruses get out into the marketplace, they mutate. So this isn't anything surprising, I think, to anybody. Companies are going back to the drawing board with executives pulling out their hair over how to best handle the unpredictable nature of the pandemic. If you're sick, stay home. I mean, it doesn't make much sense if you're sick to go to work, does it? But some of us feel obligated. I know I'm the type that, hey, nothing's going to keep me away from doing what I love to do and to do the work. So I can see how there's a group of people, and this may be true outside of people in my circle, where, if you're sick, you're being, how would you say it, a wimp. And so I'm not wimpy. I'm going to go to work, and I don't care if I'm sick, but I should have a little more empathy for the people around me, that I might infect them with something that they don't want. And, and then so the company needs to have a firm hand in saying, hey, if you're sick, stay home, and to have flexibility that way. And I think that's how the wave of infections happened in the first place, is that people didn't stay home when they were sick, first of all. And second of all, they were traveling internationally. And I think, looking back, if it did indeed come out of a certain country in Asia, and a lot of people were traveling there in the Pacific Northwest, where we're located, landfall likely happened in the Pacific Northwest, in areas like Seattle and Portland and San Francisco, on down the line. So there's, and it seems like it's progressing around by time zone, moving east, if you will. Anyhow, but I don't know. I think what you're going to run into, and I'm seeing this with a lot of the people I'm talking to, is that you're going to create disruption in your organization by having firm policy. Meaning, hey, if you're mandatory vaccines, I quit, right? So some people that aren't up for the vaccines or aren't convinced, they might just quit, and that creates disruption. What does that mean for your organization, where you don't have accommodations for people that aren't interested in doing the vaccine? On the other side, mask mandates are something that are interesting. And, I'm the type that if I'm going into a dirty environment where there's lots of things that might happen to me, I might wear a mask. And so for me, I see that as optional. But if there's a mandate, do I really want to work in that environment where I'm starved for air, even though it might, think about it, if it's like even a clean environment to begin with. Anyhow. So what does it say here? Companies are going to the drawing board, pulling out their hair. Unpredictable nature of the pandemic, per the New York Times. So I think that's a little, dramatic. Of course, the news is trying to get people to read it. So I don't know if the Delta variant is going to create that much of an issue, because many people are already vaccinated. So that means that, generally speaking, even though people can get the Delta variant, my suspicion is it's the people that haven't been vaccinated that are going to be impacted the most, and in populations over the age of, say, 60. Anyway, that's just my presupposition. I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV, and I did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Let's see. So much for an office return. Bex, let's see. Big tech's power seems endless. That's interesting. The pandemic wiped out businesses across many sectors, but there's one that remains impervious: tech. This should be no surprise, as millions turn to their smartphones for everything from food and essentials to delivery of wellness and fitness. The New York Times. Wow, the 2 articles in a row quoted the New York Times. The combined stock market valuation of Alphabet, Apple, Nvidia, Tesla, Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook increased 70%. That's astounding, to more than $10 trillion. That should cause everybody a little pause. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. Tech was never wielded so much power of American life, but to what end? That's a great question. And you wish that some of these LinkedIn editors would actually answer that question with people. So maybe they're just trying to create a question so that people see down here. Let's see. Yeah, it's interesting to see. So the other part of the LinkedIn news, just so you know, is you can go through and see the people that are talking about this article and this trend. And I find it fascinating, the people that are showing up there and making their comments known. And, I don't know Albert Fung or this other gentleman, Robert Weiss. So I don't know. That's an astounding number. I can't even imagine $10 trillion. That's just the increase, right? 70%. So that means, what was it before? Is 3 trillion. Am I reading that right? So somebody better at math should probably take a look at that for me. But that's a lot of money. So what do we take away from that? Well, number one, you're going to see new business formations, because even though there's a pandemic, I don't think any of these companies are impervious to competition. Although they may have higher standing and a lot of cash in the bank, that doesn't mean that their customer base is going to remain loyal. So unless they're loyal to their customer base, there's room for opportunity. So that means you might see startups, an alternative to some of these channels if they get all too powerful and are abusing said power. On the flip side, if they're increasing their market value, that means they're hiring. So if you've ever wanted, in order to support that kind of number, you're going to have, and to continue growing, you're going to have to hire people. I saw that at least with Amazon. A lot of the people I interacted with in the last 2 years that got hired on at Amazon, they were hiring like crazy as fast as they could. And I'm sure they've had some attrition, but anyway, let's see. End of the California dream. What does that mean? Let's see what's happening in California. California is arguably the most important region of the last 70 years, epitomizing American economic dynamism and innovation like no other state. I like Alexander's use of language, don't you? A recent article in The Atlantic argues that while it is still a leader in innovation, the state is failing its newcomers and middle classes in providing the kind of opportunity and affordability that other generations enjoyed. We asked Californians what they thought of the argument. Some of the answers are below. So go through and read those. Statistics show who is really leaving and arriving in California, why the Californian dream isn't dead. So maybe we should look at that. Who is or isn't leaving California? Of course, they're quoting the New York Times once more. Population decline. Also, want to start lively. Okay, are you making me join something here? Isn't that great? So here's the challenge, and the reason I don't like LinkedIn quoting articles from the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal is I believe it's borderline collusion, that they force you to subscribe just to read an article that they're posting. So I don't know if there's an affiliate link here or not, but my suspicion is there's some revenue sharing going on. And so I'll just go back and we'll avoid that particular article and we'll go to the Atlantic article because I want to see some more detail here. And hopefully the Atlantic allows us to read said article. The once dynamic state. Okay. Sorry about that. I mean, it looks like they have a pretty long article here if y'all want to read it. So maybe I'll go back and look at that at a later date. That's a long article. You guys can go check that out. It's in the LinkedIn news. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing. California is a gorgeous state. There is so much beauty there. I mean, I think it'd be hard pressed. I mean, Oregon is a beautiful state. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But the beauty in California is equally, if not more, astounding. And it's a large state. So there's a diversity of things to do there in the outdoors, the ocean, the bay, the mountains. There's a lot of value and beauty in California. And so it would be a shame to see all of the companies emigrating out of the state, and the ones that are staying probably may have some kind of, I don't know, tax benefit. But yeah, I would love to live in California. I think there's places where the taxes are much lower. So anyway, what could we take away from that? Well, there might be market opportunity in California, especially for real estate. You might find that all these companies leaving have created a vacuum. About your resume 4 years later. Let's see what this says. There's ghosting in the job world, and there's ghosting and inviting someone for an interview years later. That's the theme of a Wall Street Journal report, which requires you to have a login ID password and to pay a monthly fee, which highlighted a number of people who were contacted by places like McDonald's and Cheesecake Factory 2 to 4 years after applying for jobs. Laugh all you want, this tactic, but White Castle said it reached out to over 500,000 applicants dating as far back as 2017 with current job leads, and 32,000 responded with interest. That's incredible. That is a lot of outreach. And to get 32,000 over 500,000, I don't know what percentage that is, but that's a lot of response. But there is no excuse to reach back out to people 2 to 4 years after applying for a job and expect that person to be available. I mean, hey, Nathan, good to see you. That I think is just astounding to me that someone would wait. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I harp on the most is that, um, organizations ought to have systems in place to mitigate that and to keep people in a conversation loop so that they don't feel like they're not important. Uh, and this is the first interaction that many people might have with that company. So if I apply at McDonald's and it's a place I love to eat and I love to go to and the whole thing with the milkshakes, um, then I wonder if they don't respond to me when I apply, and I get to maybe working age, maybe I'm a kid and I grow up with McDonald's and I love the place. What do you think the likelihood is that they have me as a loyal customer? What do you think the probability is? It's not as good as if I gave them a good experience, not just when they eat there and as they grow up as children, but as adults when they take their own kids there. And it's a life. The way you create loyalty is to treat people like human beings, and give them experiences that they want to return to. Cheesecake Factory, on the other hand, I mean, I can tell you, in all the times I've been to Cheesecake Factory, I've always been baffled by the menu. And that to me is a terrible experience. If I don't know what to order and it takes me 20 minutes to order, that is a terrible customer experience. So if I was Cheesecake Factory, I would certainly have some sort of process by which I make the menu a little easier to consume, or separate, the cheesecakes from the salads, from the different things that you're offering. Knowing that somebody's coming to your dining room, do you think they're going to start off with cheesecake? I guess they could, right? I'll start off with an appetizer of cheesecake. But anyway, that's another discussion. What we're seeing, though, is that those companies that are equally challenged in sourcing people are equally challenged in sourcing people for talent acquisition. So it doesn't surprise me that companies are continuing to have issues onboarding people because they don't have enough staff to onboard the staff, right? They need to have people to train the people that get hired. They need to have people to actually hire the people. They need to have there has to be a whole group of a whole infrastructure, a push of labor to do these kind of placements. Good. Let's see. Good to see everyone. I completely agree about Cheesecake Factory, but the food is so good that I forgot about the painful menu experience. Yeah, I mean, what it should be is that, hey, could I get you started with some drinks and then I'll bring you a menu, right? Why don't they start with the drinks and then bring me the menu? Because it's going to soften that experience big time. Or, bring me a menu on an iPad and say, hey, it's a questionnaire. What do you feel like today? Well, I feel like a salad. Okay, here's our 5 salads. What do you like on your salad? Well, I like to have chicken or fish or whatever. Anyway, it seems like they would have a conditional app to help you choose. But yeah, I mean, certainly you're absolutely right. The silver lining is the mobile ordering. But the challenge with the mobile ordering is you could do that forever and never meet people. I feel and have felt for the last, 18 months to 2 years that I want to reconnect with people. I want to be in environments with others and couldn't. And now that we're kind of getting back to, or at least progressing toward what might be considered normal, I think that we're in a position now where it can go back to that, because there's a lot lost in isolating yourself. And yes, I do love mobile ordering, but the other side of mobile ordering is a lot of these smaller venues didn't have any infrastructure set up to do that kind of mobile ordering. And so they were almost forced overnight to rely on services like Grubhub or Uber Eats or whatever the flavor of the day is. And it ate into their profits. So they're at a point where they're in survival mode. And, certainly that could be a reason that a lot of restaurants just flat went out of business. In fact, some big names, at least in our geography, are never coming back. Restaurants I used to love going to. So anyway, Let's see about your resume. How much higher can prices, let's see, really go? Well, I mean, that depends. I mean, we had an infusion of however many trillions of dollars into the economy from the government here in the U.S. You don't think that that's going to create some kind of inflation? Of course it is. And so with cost of money so low and an infusion of dollars, there's no reason that prices shouldn't go higher, and they may continue to go higher unless something is done about it. So I don't know what the opportunity is there. Maybe the opportunity is to become more self-sufficient or self-reliant. I mean, I don't know. If we're talking about things like frozen peas, well, you know what? I can go into the Home Depot and get a package of 100 seeds and plant my own peas and have a garden. So I mean, I don't know what the alternative is, but I can assure you that 100 seeds at the Home Depot is less than a couple of bucks, especially this time of year because everybody's already planted their gardens. Great, keep them for next year. Let's see. Companies are testing the extent of their pricing power. That's interesting, helping fuel U.S. inflation. Yeah, I think certainly there's been a strain, and more of this might be related to the strain on the supply chains when things were disrupted and operations were shut down, and we're seeing kind of like an echo boom of that, where we had these supply chains that were restricted, and now they've opened up, but there's a lag, right? There's a lead time for everything, and that means that it's going to take time for that to kind of ripple its way through the rest of the supply chain. So what's the opportunity there? Maybe the opportunity is, hey, if I know how to navigate a supply chain, or I know how to globally source materials to help the company I'm working for still make a profit, even though the cost of goods is going up, and I don't want to pass that on to my customer, or I want to minimize the impact on the customer and still make a profit, then I might consider sourcing from a different place where there's a benefit or an advantage to doing that. So if I have expertise in that space, I'd be looking at companies that need help with supply chain. Does work slide into your DMs? Let's see what this says. Is the sound of a notification making you jump? You're not alone. BBC World Life says companies are relying more than ever on direct messaging and moving away from email, constantly pinging workers on Slack or Microsoft Teams. This more casual work communication is blurring the lines between professional and personal life, making workers feel pressure to respond anywhere and at any time. One person said, I feel like DMs follow me home more than email. Well, so here's the thing. Have a separate phone for work, and when you're done with work, turn it off. I mean, the family plans nowadays, you can add a phone for, I don't know, what is it, for either free or $10 a month or something like that. What's another phone just for work? I mean, you can create boundaries. There's things that we can do. But I think as an organization, if I'm looking at not creating some boundaries, you could say, hey, I expect you to be on Microsoft Teams constantly if you're not in a meeting. Well, great. Then we need to open up the negotiations, because I agreed to this kind of an opportunity where it was, a standard common work week. And, anyway, so this is where you as a candidate may need to clarify what is the standards of practice. Good. So again, if you have any questions, I'd certainly like to see them in the chat so that we can answer those. If you'd like to do that privately, put a question in the green room chat. You click the link in the description, regardless of where you're joining from. There should be a link there to do that. And then certainly share out this broadcast. I'd appreciate that. But anyway, put your questions in the chat. I think this 24/7 type of work is a thing of the past. Now, as an entrepreneur, right, when I was selling real estate, that was just a fact of life. I was the business, and there was no one else to backfill. But my suspicion is most organizations have people that can backfill certain gaps, and there could be sharing of responsibility there. So maybe that's an organizational development question. Good. Vaccinations rise among hesitant. I don't know what that means, but let's find out. More people are getting vaccinated in states where new virus cases are surging with jab rates and jab rates. Wow. In Arkansas, Florida, Louisiana, Missouri, and Nevada outpacing the nation as a whole, according to White House officials. New cases per day have risen 55% over the past week per Axios, and the Delta variant accounts for 83% of infections. Now, what they don't tell you in those 83% of infections is who's getting infected. So I'd like to see the age distribution and the comorbidities on that for sure. Experts say new cases and hospitalizations are largely threatening unvaccinated individuals, grabbing the attention of vaccine-hesitant Americans. So let's see what this says. See if we can get some breakdowns. 60%. Yeah, I'm not seeing a distribution here. Yeah. So anyway, I don't think you can have one without the other. You can't just say a blanket statement like, hey, there's been this kind of thing happening. But anyway, U.S. government has secured 200 million additional doses of the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. Oh, good. Let's see. Let's see. Thank you for the question, Amy. Let's see if we can get to that. Put it up on the screen for everybody to see. Let me stop sharing my screen really quick. Okay, I am still unemployed since October 2020. What do I say when there is a long space from my work history? Who's asking? Who's asking? What do you say? Pandemic, right? A mental sabbatical, right? An emotional sabbatical. Let's see. The thing is, if you're networking and you're doing that kind of activity and someone asks, I'd be surprised. Most people will accept you at how you present yourself. So it might be that, even though you believe that that gap is harming you, it's normally in a response to you not getting traction in, say, a hiring process, you not getting an interview, you not getting things. So now you're thinking, okay, I got to find out what's wrong with me rather than saying what's wrong with the hiring process. So there's two sides of this. And so you're focusing on the part you control, which is totally normal, right? That you should focus on that which you control, which is, hey, I've been out of work since October. What should I do about that? I'm now going on a year. And believe me, I know people who have blown well past a year. And one thing I would suggest is to track your numbers. And I know it sounds silly and somewhat simple, but how are you getting interviews and where did they come from? How are you getting interviews and where did they come from? And then look at those conversion rates. How many of those things, right, those activities did you participate in to generate that interview? And what you might find is recruiters are looking for ways, and it's the nature of their business, and they're wrestling with it all the time, I'm sure. They're not perfect individuals by any stretch. But they do their best. I know that to be true. And what we find is that at the end of the day, they're really looking for reasons to exclude some people into filtering people out rather than trying to find a way to filter someone in. Okay, so the hiring process is a shooting match. It's kind of like playing roulette. Okay, you put your money on a number and you you spin the wheel and you pray that it lands on that number. And it doesn't always land on that number. And it may never land on that number if you're only betting on that one number. Now, the more bets you have on the board, obviously with roulette, the higher the probability you're going to actually get a win. And that means if I'm only getting like, 2 interviews a month, then that certainly isn't enough to get traction in a search. That means I need to look at the methods I'm using to generate these kind of opportunities and decide for myself, what do I need to do differently? Should I add something to the mix? Or is it the fact, am I playing from behind it? And if that's a question that's coming from a recruiter, pandemic, I've been active in the marketplace since October, interviewing and doing different things. And, right now it's just the way it is. And I think it's unfortunate people aren't having a little more empathy, that a recruiter isn't having more empathy. And with that situation. Now, it isn't, funny enough, it isn't until a recruiter actually gets into that same situation that they get the empathy. And that's normal from any profession, actually. So, I mean, I didn't have much empathy. I thought something was wrong with people when they got laid off. I thought it was their fault, right? Until I got laid off. And then I realized that every organization has a, how would you call it? A bottom 5%. And those are the people that kind of run through an algorithm and get the notifications when it comes time to do layoffs. And it's disheartening for sure, but it's reality that companies operate that. Should they operate that way is a different question. Certainly not. And there are many companies out there that you can vet and see whether or not. But, part of that is that recruiter is not doing their job. Their job is to recruit you into the organization and to find the right fit. Now, if you applied to a job and you're not the right fit, their job is to find the right fit. And if there is one, to funnel you into that particular opportunity. It isn't to disqualify you just because you haven't been working since 2020. It's to discern, even though you've been out since 2020, what are the skills that you have? Can you do this job? And are you a good fit for the culture? That's their job. So don't think that has anything to do with you. And it could be that this is somebody new to the recruitment business. You never know. You never know. This person could have just come from some other profession outside of recruitment, and this is their first job, and they got to find a way to get that list down to a manageable number. Because you can imagine how many people are applying to a job nowadays, 2, 3, 4, 500 applicants, and they got to find a way to narrow that list. The good news is they asked you questions, so they thought you could do the job, and in some ways they had a short list of maybe 10 or 15 that they had to get down to 7 or 8. So I'd feel pretty good that they even asked me any questions, and that's a win, and that you're looking for a specific type of opportunity. And here's what you bring to the marketplace. And even though you've been out since that time, you have value. And if they don't see your value, that's not your problem. That's not your fault. It may be that there's not a fit right now, and that's fine, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't see your value. If they think your value is the fact that you're unemployed, I don't think there's anything to be said there. Which is a better resume bullet? I don't know. Are you going to provide me some? Hopefully, you'll provide me some. I think the best resume bullet is you. Truthfully, there's no resume that's a substitute for you and a relationship. Meaning, let's see, to ensure client success, successfully work across teams. What's it looks like the same thing. Maybe, to ensure client success. So what we look for in bullets on a resume, or what the recruitment function looks for, I'm not a big advocate of leading with resume. When at all possible, I want to lead with relationship. But when it comes to resume, what we're looking for in the bullets is actions and outcomes. And so what is successfully? How successfully? That's what people want to know. They want to know that your past performance indicated a future result. Okay. There is no value add. So just to be clear, Nathan, there is no value add in the bullets you've presented. Okay. Just because you say it doesn't mean that it's true. Showing it is a different thing, right? So saying and showing are two different things. The way you show somebody that you were successful is to provide metrics of success. And so if you worked across teams to generate something, right? To ensure client success, okay, there has to be a KPI there. And if they didn't track one, create one. And if you create one, track it. I mean, gather that data. So it could be that client success was measured by retention. Okay, what % retention did you have of all the clients that you interacted with? And it's never 100%. Okay, I don't know anybody who's retained 100%. Now, if it was the first year, I mean, if you're talking about software, it might have been a 3-year license. So I don't know. If it's a monthly license and it's recurring revenue and they could cancel at any time, then that says something, right? So if I have like 86% retention over 3 years for a monthly service that could be canceled at any time, that's a value, right? That's the value add. is now I can see the proof in the pudding that your past performance might indicate a future result for me as an employer. Therefore, I'm going to have you in for an interview to find out exactly how Nathan did that. What is your method of success? Okay, that's how I'd approach that. Anyway, I think, generally speaking, people invest entirely too much time on resume and not enough time talking to people. I'm speaking in total generalities, and I admit that. I'm free to admit that, right? So I'm actually going to the beach next week, so that's why I'm showing you some beach scenes here. And so I might be doing a remote broadcast from somewhere on the Oregon coast and doing that kind of thing. Let's see. What is Amy up to? I have been taking a couple of medical billing classes. Oh, that's great. And hope to transition to the medical environment, but has not been getting the opportunity. Okay. So how many people? So here's the thing. How many people do you know that work in that business? How many people do you know that work in the medical billing business? And how many people can you meet this week that you haven't met before that are also in the medical billing business? So the commodity in networking is people. And my encouragement would be talk to anybody and everybody who's got a pulse and is willing to say yes to a conversation, that you go have a conversation with them. Good. Let's see what Tracy has to say. Thank you, Tracy, for your contribution. I'd like to show results prior to me taking over as manager versus current results. Yeah, I mean, I think we all need current state, right? And we don't know if we've added any value unless we discern what current state is to know that there's even been a difference as a leader. So good job. Yes, networking. Call it whatever you want. Call it interviewing in advance of an opportunity. Call it interview prep. Call it a conversation. I would like to have a conversation. Not I would like to have a network meeting. I would like to have a conversation with you about medical billing and how you got into the business. And what was that like? I'm really curious to get your perspective. Now it's not about what? It's not about me. It's not about my need for employment, because that's only unique to who? To me. And it's not that it's not valid. It's just not valid for the other person. Right? So that has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. And if you want them to have a conversation with you, we need to make the conversation about them. And so we can weave in some of those other components as we have conversations and are building relationship, and we find that this person actually might be somebody that we want to interact with. Because it may be that you don't want to interact with them. Let's see. Should we end the 9 to 5? These questions are so silly in the news, so I'm not going to address those. 9 to 5 has been over for a long time. For those who want to work, they should work. For those who don't want to work, don't work. This is not complicated. For the ones that work and actually produce results, they should be advanced. And the ones that don't want to work and don't produce results, they should not advance. That's it. There's nothing wrong with saying that people that work hard shouldn't be rewarded. They should. Now, do they get rewarded? That's a different question. If you're not rewarded, what is your next step? Is to take control of your own career and choose a different path. Because your path may be one that is not going in the direction that you want it to. Any other questions out there before I go? And I will see you next week from the Oregon coast. I'll have to try to find some internet service somewhere and see if we can't make it happen. Maybe I'll try to do this from an iPad. Ooh, that would be fun. iPad, should we try that? I'll have my daughter bring her iPad. There we go. Okay. All right, folks, I don't see any other questions here. Thank you for joining us today. Again, every Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific time is a good time to show up, get your question answered. And of course, if you want additional support or anything of that nature, you can certainly reach out to me directly on LinkedIn through the private messages. And I hope to see you next Career Happy Hour. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.